today I'm talking about and ranking every single one of Daisy Ridley's films except for her Star Wars ones, because those are just like their own beast of a thing, and she has such an interesting filmography, so it's fun to highlight all of her other cool projects. I hope you enjoy, and please let me know what your favorite and least favorite Daisy Ridley movies are, because there's some really fascinating ones in there. Scrawl. This is a 2015/2019 film. This movie's bad. So this is technically Daisy Ridley's first film, and she is by far the best part of it, but it makes no sense whatsoever. So I believe the premise is supposed to be kind of similar to like Death Note, where there's this notebook and anything you write in the notebook happens. But also there's a comic book, and maybe what they made in the comic book actually happens. Also, maybe Daisy Ridley's the devil, and there's this whole thing with like lineage and like this bed and breakfast that everyone's staying at. I don't really know. This movie was like an experimental student film. They did not want to use any sort of traditional storytelling mechanisms to tell a story that didn't make any kind of sense. Like, I don't think they even explained what the premise is until like halfway through the film. And even once they did, it didn't really give any more context to anything. Everything was still just really weird and just kind of happening. Characters would just kind of walk from one scene to the next scene and then maybe talk at people for a while, or just like random flashes of things would kind of happen. I have no idea what the end sequence was. It was just like a bunch of people running around in the woods. And I'm like, why is anyone running anywhere? What's happening? And who are all these people just killing other people? Why are people killing people? I thought it was supposed to be like the mom was going to be an axe murderer, but she doesn't really do that. Also, there's this thing with the beast that's supposed to be a father figure thing, and it's, what is happening? What is everything? What? If you, by chance, have any sort of grasp of what the hell is happening in this movie, please enlighten me. I would love to just have a general sense of what the hell this movie is. So yeah, no, I did not care for this movie, and I don't recommend it. Like, not even in like a fun party setting of like everyone's getting drunk and let's make fun of this thing. Like, no, not gonna have a good time. It's so bad. Just don't watch it. Please do not. The Bubble. This is a 2022 film about COVID. What? Crazy. Oh god. And it got really terrible reviews. So I definitely went into it with lower expectations. And it was, again, an interesting experience. I definitely like the concept a lot. Being on a film set during quarantine times and just kind of like the maddening nature of all that. But it was definitely way too long of a film. And like, it didn't feel like it really did enough with this premise. That it was just kind of that one joke of this is what it's like to be on a film set when there's COVID shenanigans. So it just felt like the same joke over and over and over again, and it didn't spice it up at all throughout the film. And the characters would just kind of leave, and it just sort of felt weird that they were gone out of the story. I think had they either kept the story as is but just shortened it by like half an hour, it would have been a lot stronger. Or if the different acts of the film would have felt more different, had there been more dramatic of a change in each of the acts to really revitalize it, then it could have been better. But as is, it's just kind of fine. I don't necessarily think it's as bad as the critics made it out to be, but it's definitely not a good film. It's just an okay film. It isn't a liked category, but it's like at the very bottom of the liked category. And that might be a little bit generous, but I did like the cast. Karen is a solid lead. It was fun seeing Apatow's other daughter do some stuff. So yeah, it was okay. Would I recommend it? Maybe it's like background noise, or kind of like a weird look back at COVID times, but in general, not really. It's a unique little film, and it doesn't quite work, but it is definitely a time capsule of the strangeness we all experienced when COVID was much more prevalent. So yeah, no, I don't really recommend it. Marsh on the Orient Express. This is a 2017 film, and it's just a retelling of the classic Agatha Christie story, and it's interesting. I haven't read the book, but I have seen the original movie, and there's definitely a lot I like about this, but there's also a lot that I thought was strange. First off, the simplest way to describe what I think doesn't work for me is that it feels like it lingers on moments that should be short, and then it flies by moments I feel should be long. There's also some strange humor in here that feels really out of place to me, as well as some like little action set pieces, and I'm like, why? This is a murder mystery. We don't need an action set piece. What are you doing? Also, in the original, it feels like all the people on the train are given equal attention, and any one of them could have done it. I don't know if they each actually did get roughly the same amount of time, but at least felt like they all got this equal amount of time as a potential suspect. But in here, that definitely does not feel like the case. There's literally a montage of interviews at one point, and it's like, no, you really should be balancing this. Also, him explaining, how it all happens is very satisfying. But what I didn't like about that scene is that it was basically just two shots. It was one shot of the detective explaining everything while he's on a green screen, and then a second shot of the entire cast on a different green screen listening to him. And it feels so disconnected. Whereas in the original, it was like 45 minutes of him explaining everything, which was great, though ridiculous. But like, they were all in one train car, and he was just like walking amongst them. And it was so much more intimate, and it felt so much more intense because he's like, going through people's motivations of why they could have done it, and like what lies in their stories, and like what's going on there. So like, it really worked from a storytelling perspective. Whereas here it's just two green screens, so it's just so disconnected. I am dumping on this movie a lot. I did like bits of it. Most of the cast was pretty great. It was really nice to see Daisy Ridley. Olivia Colman is fantastic as always. Dame Judi Dench was great. The base story is great, so it's hard to have a bad time with it. Would I recommend it? No, I would say go back and watch the original. The original's so good. It's got such a great cast. This one's fine, but like, nah, just watch the original. It's really good. The Inventor. This is a 2023 film starring Stephen Fry and features Daisy Ridley as well. And the basic premise is this is inspired by the story of Da Vinci, and it's cute, classic animated stop motion film. And it's interesting. It was definitely cute. It had a nice charm to it. I liked what it was going for, of teaching us about Da Vinci, about what his last few years were like. Like, I know a chunk of stuff about him, but this definitely taught me some things. And I liked the animation. I thought that was well done and fun. I enjoyed the characters, especially the king. Just the way he prances about was really neat. And then his sister, played by Daisy, was terrific. I mean, I'm biased towards Daisy, but she was great. Featuring the grave robbing was definitely a choice. There was just a lot more mutilating corpses than I was anticipating for a children's film. He definitely did it, and it was an important part of this time in his life. But like, this is a kid's film. It feels a little tonally out of place. Also, it was trying to be a musical, and it really needed to not. That was one too many things. This in general, it felt like it was just trying to be too much. It needed to narrow its focus, and it would have been a lot better. Especially the start. The start was kind of just all over the place. They were just jumping from one idea to the next, and I was just kind of lost, and I kind of just wanted to shut it off, but I was like, no, give it a chance. Wait for Daisy to show up. And then she did, and it was good. But really, they just didn't give us enough time to settle into the world before they just started throwing new things at us. So yeah, I did like the film. I thought it was fine. I put it middle of the road. Would I recommend it? Not really. Like, if you really like some of the cast, maybe, or if you're a fan of this old school type of animation, sure, but just kind of keep your expectations more in check, because it's fine, it's interesting, but it's not the home run it was hoping to be. Peter Rabbit. This is a 2018 film starring a ton of actors you would recognize. Actually, I'm very surprised with how many of-note actors are in this. This is based off of the children's books of the same name. And it's interesting because it's not terrible. There's actually a lot I like about this movie. James Corden is definitely not any part of what I like about this movie. He was such a bad choice. It's weird too because the entire movie, it sounds like he's doing an Elijah Wood impression, and I'm just like, why didn't you just get Elijah Wood? I get that he's not English, but still, he's transformative. He can be anything. And who doesn't love Elijah Wood? You're wrong if you don't. But going back to things I like about it, the story at its heart is cute and fun. There's a romance between this angry farmer and this beautiful woman next door. It's a story about following your dreams. It's a story about how nature belongs to nature. I really, really loved all three of love the sisters, in particular Daisy Ridley's character, Cottontail, because she was just so ridiculous and so over the top, just like always trying to like jump off of stuff and just like going for the adventures. There's a lot of heart in this movie that I really enjoyed. There's a lot that I didn't like though. For instance, seeing Sam Neill's butt crack. Why? We didn't need to see that. That's a really dumb joke. I hate that a lot. There's just a lot of dumb humor just like that. There's also like a lot of slapstick humor that I'm just like, no, this isn't funny. I get that this movie is for small kids, but still, you can do better than these cartoon slapstick things. There's also some really good traditionally drawn stuff intermixed occasionally, and it's like, why can't the entire movie be that? Because like, it's gorgeous and I feel like it better serves the story. So yeah, I definitely like this. I would recommend it if you have children. It's not a bad kids movie. It doesn't have a bad message. It's definitely not great by any means, but it's still an entertaining experience. So yeah, if you have children, give it a watch. Ophelia. This is a 2018 Daisy Ridley movie. It is a reimagining of Hamlet told from Ophelia's perspective. Now, just to give full context, I'm not a huge Shakespeare guy and I'm not super duper familiar with the story of Hamlet. I definitely have seen Hamlet at least once, but it's not like, you know, engraved into my memory. So I was definitely surprised by things in this movie. And I enjoyed this movie a good solid amount. Daisy Ridley was a great lead. I, in particular, love George McKay as Hamlet, especially how they portrayed him as this version of Mad, because he kind of, not necessarily like a lovesick puppy, but something similar to that, but more interesting. And he's such a great actor. I thoroughly enjoy him as an actor. I also really like Clive Owen in this. He was just like hamming it up and it was great. You could tell he was having a lot of fun being like the evil guy. I can't critique this with the lens of being very familiar with Hamlet, but as a person who's like very tangentially aware of Hamlet, I thought it was a good solid story that I quite enjoyed. My one complaint about the movie is that, especially in the beginning, it felt like it was a very thirsty movie, but they wanted to hold back on the spice to keep it as a PG-13 rating. And I think that did the movie a disservice, because like, there's a lot of horny people in this, and they're just right up against that line. And it's like, they really should have just crossed that line and done a little bit more, and it would have done a lot of service to the overall movie. Sometimes stories need spice, and this is a story that needed some spice. I would say, if you like any of the actors that are in it, I think it's worth it. Or if you're a big Shakespeare/Hamlet guy, it's definitely interesting, I think worth a watch. It did get kind of mixed-ish reviews, so be prepared for that. But I thought it was good. I thought it was fine. I thought it was solid. I've been wanting to watch this for a while, and I'm glad I finally got to watch it. The Marsh King's Daughter. This stars Daisy Ridley and Ben Mendelsohn. It reminds me a bit of the movies Room with Brie Larson and Leave No Trace with Thomasin McKenzie. But the basic premise is, in the UP lives this family in a log cabin. A dad who's survivalist obsessed, a mom who's always sad and upset, and a daughter who's 10 and covered in tattoos. Life seems pretty nice there. But then one day something happens and the world gets opened up in a way that the daughter is not expecting. And then 30 years goes by and she's happy in a regular life, but maybe things are about to take a turn. I'm kind of vague there just because part of the movie is just figuring out what exactly is going on. I went into this with pretty low expectations. Last I checked it, I had a 33 on Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm like, wow, this must be terrible. But I kept just like waiting for it to get bad, and it never happened. I don't really understand why it has such terrible reviews. It definitely has a lot of room for improvement, but it's not a bad movie by any means. It is a little slow at times, but it's never like, oh my god, just move on already. And there are a couple emotional moments that didn't play out perfectly. They needed a little bit more work, but I never was like really upset with the movie for doing anything. Part of the consensus on Rotten Tomatoes is also that the ending felt messy, and I'm like, no, like I did keep thinking, oh, okay, so this is how it ends, and then it kept going. But I'm still fine and happy with how it ended. ended. I think the ending worked. I think both the leads did a good job. I especially liked 10-year-old version of Daisy Ridley's character. She was very solid. I also like the tattoos. I think they look good, especially like there's some facial ones. So yeah, I would totally recommend this movie. Like, it's not gonna blow your mind or change your life or anything, but like, it's a nice little story. Only Yesterday. This is a 1991 film. The basic premise is kind of loosey-goosey, and I didn't understand it for a good long while. So essentially, this woman in her late 20s just kind of meandering through life and is taking a summer off of her regular job to go work on a small little farm in the middle of nowhere countryside. And whilst on the way there, she reminisces about her time as a little girl in 5th grade. Yeah, I had to look up what the premise was, because like for the first 20 minutes, I was just completely lost. I'm like, I don't know which of these little kids is the main character, because I feel like we're jumping around from a lot of them. And then also, who are all these adults? I don't get it. So I did stop it after like 25 minutes and like looked up the premise, and I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. And then also the movie explained itself like the minute after I came back to it. So it was a thing. I don't know. There really isn't a super strong plot to this movie. The whole thing has a very slice of life feel to it. And honestly, I wish this movie kind of would have picked a lane, because it's very slice of life, but there is a bit of a plot. And I wish they either would have gone just completely slice of life and kind of just ignored adult stuff, or gone more heavy into the plot. So I would have liked for them to be even more disconnected or more legitimately connected. Anywho's it. I did still end up enjoying this movie. I did think it definitely worked for me. It just took a while to get into because I didn't know what the hell was going on. So I would recommend it, and I think you're sitting in a better place than I was because I've explained what the premise is. So you should have a bearing as the movie starts. So yeah, it's good. A Young Woman and the Sea. This stars Daisy Ridley, and the basic premise is it is inspired by the true story of this young woman who set out to swim across the English Channel about 100 years ago. And it's pretty great. I feel like the first quarter to first half of the movie is really, really solid. Like, they did such a great job with emotion there, just really emotionally telling the story, because like it's a feel-good sports movie, so you kind of have a good sense of where things are going. But like, there were so many people trying to work past depression and them getting the comeuppance on terrible people, and it's just like, it's always so satisfying, and it just like really strikes a chord with me. But I feel like in audiences general, just like it just hits you just right. But then like a good ways into the film, those scenes suddenly weren't landing as well. It felt like the scenes were just too short to really hit those emotional levels that they needed to for everything to work. And I feel like what was happening was that this movie was actually longer, and that they needed to cut stuff down. So that I'm sure they removed scenes and shortened existing scenes. And where they primarily did a lot of that stuff was from the middle section of the movie. But then eventually it stopped, and the movie slowed down again, and it started to really emotionally tell the story again, and things started to work again. So yeah, they knew how to tell stuff emotionally, but they just had to keep the runtime down because this is a family film, and family films can't be close to 3 hours long. This isn't the good old days of The Sound of Music. But that stuff only took it down a little bit. It just kind of prevented me from putting it in the really like section. Honestly, I feel upon repeat viewing, I'm probably gonna like it more. That like, I'm not gonna be as bothered by that stuff. I think Daisy gave a really great performance, a nuanced performance, especially too because her character is like slowly going deaf. And she does a lot of little things that are very deaf mannerisms, and I'm like, ooh, that was a good touch. I noticed that. Good job. And all the supporting characters do really good. Christopher Eccleston's in this. He's great. The sister from Fleabag is in this, and she's awesome. I wish she would have been in a little bit more. I loved the mom. The mom was just perfection. I love how strong all the women were, even in the face of all this oppression. They're just like, we know what we want. We're gonna do it. You can't stop us, even though you very easily can stop us because you have all the power. It was really just good, strong vibes throughout. So yeah, no, I definitely enjoyed myself. And even though I had a little bit of issues with it, I would without a doubt recommend it. It's a good, fun, feel-good sports movie that gets you right in the feels. So yeah, it's definitely worth a watch. Chaos Walking. This movie I've been kind of pumped about for a while. Those trailers looked great. I love Tom Holland and Daisy Ridley. The basic premise is that they're on a new planet and all of the men on the world, their thoughts are constantly broadcast out. There's suspiciously no women until Daisy Ridley shows up. Like I said, I was really excited for this movie, but then it got really, really bad reviews. But I was still intrigued by it. I'm like, no, I still want to go see it. And I'm glad I did give it a shot because I like this movie a ton. I don't know where all the hate comes from people who haven't read the book series. I'll talk about that in a second. Like, as I was watching the movie, I kept waiting for it to be like, when is this gonna get bad? I don't see how this is gonna get bad. And eventually I was like, is the ending just really bad and that killed it for everyone? No, it's a solid sci-fi movie. I enjoyed the premise a lot. The special effects were terrific. The constant thoughts were a little annoying at times, and at other times it was like, you should really be saying more stuff. But really, I enjoyed it. There was great humor in there. There was great heart. There was a great story. The dog was adorable. So yeah, I don't get what all the hate's about. Except for the people who read the books. I read the Wikipedia summary of some of the books, and yeah, no, the books sound amazing. Like, they go down places you really don't expect, and it sounds incredible. I completely understand anyone who's read the book, their distaste for this movie. They changed it a bunch. They had a ton of different writers on this movie, and they just completely changed the ending. But I kind of think the reason they changed the ending is because they knew they weren't gonna make the other two books, so they wanted this one to just have a definitive ending rather than the very cliffhanger ending of the books. I do think this will get remade eventually to a more faithful adaptation, and that adaptation is going to be amazing. But having just this one, I'm very okay with this thing's existence. I enjoyed it a ton. I don't get the hate. I definitely recommended it to my brothers. I know they're going to like it a bunch. Also, if you really want to see Tom Holland's butt, you see Tom Holland's butt in this. Sometimes I think about dying. This stars Daisy Ridley, and the basic premise is this woman has a nice routine with her life, and she likes sticking to that routine. And part of that routine features her fantasizing about death. But then one day, a cute new boy comes to her job, and maybe she wants to shake up her routine. And it's really good. I really enjoyed this film. What definitely really made it for me was Daisy's performance. It was just so unique and charming. I could really feel for her, like her social awkwardness, and just like not vibing with the people around her, her just really wanting to be home and chilling, but also her just wanting, you know, to enjoy life, but struggling with that at every turn. And then, like, as she more so opens up throughout the film, the choices Daisy made for this character were so interesting and really just like pulled me in more. Like these weird little mannerisms. It really worked for me. I also really, really loved the cinematography because they did a lot of unconventional framing, but it helped highlight actions and things not normally highlighted. Like hands doing certain things and other nervous tics. There'd be a lot of blank space, but that blank space told us stuff and added to what was being visually conveyed. And they were also really good with like holding shots for long periods of time, and just, I don't know, it was a very, very well made film that just really worked for me. If I was going to complain about anything, it would be the very, very end of the film just kind of came suddenly. It felt like there was just like a few minutes or just like a slight more build up to that moment that we were missing, because like everything else flowed very, very well together, and then it's just like suddenly we're doing the end thing where this, let's just say, reveal is happening, and that is how the story is supposed to end, but there's like a moment that's not there that needs to be there. But honestly, really didn't take it down that much. I still really enjoyed this film, and I would without a doubt recommend it if you can handle slow, quiet films. This is for sure 100% a slow, quiet film, and that's not a genre for everyone. It's not the most slow or most quiet film, so I do think it's more open for more people, but if you don't think you can handle slow, quiet films, sad as it is to say, it's safe to skip this one. So yes, I did really like it, and I would recommend it, just a little bit cautiously. Magpie. This stars Daisy Ridley, who also conceptualized the idea of this film, and it was written by her husband. And the basic premise is Daisy plays this mom to this young girl who just got her first acting job on this big feature film, and her husband is the one that has to bring her in every day. But wouldn't you know it, maybe her husband is really into the woman who plays their daughter's fake mom. And yeah, no, I loved this movie. It was really, really good. It is a very simple movie, but I don't mean simple as a criticism. Not every movie needs to be the most insanely complex thing. And honestly, it works fine because where this movie shines is the emotions. They emotionally tell the story so incredibly well. I really felt for Daisy's character and could understand and empathize with her pain. I really cheered on their daughter as she tried to succeed. And even though I despised the husband, you also do get kind of sucked up in his charm when he does put it on for this other woman. It almost feels like a completely different movie, but in a good way. Because part of that too is that the other woman, you feel so much sympathy for her. This husband is providing something for her that she desperately needs, so you want her to feel good, and he's providing that feel good for her, but him providing that feel good for her is dramatically hurting someone else. And so as I watched it, I didn't realize I was compartmentalizing into the different parts. So it was more of a complex thing just because of how separated things were, but they did still naturally flow together and back and forth. Daisy crushed it. I love Daisy just in general, but she did such a phenomenal job here. She's so good at expressing large emotions in a very subtle way. I've seen her do it in numerous films, but this is probably the best showcasing of it, especially the end of the film really is just her not really doing a lot physically, but saying a lot emotionally with just the smallest little looks, and even the stillness of her speaks volumes. I was so blown away by that. And the end too, the end was just so satisfying. You might be able to predict exactly how it's gonna end, but I don't think that's a criticism because actually seeing it play out, it's hitting a nail in with one stroke. It's just so satisfying. And it builds too, which I really, really love. It's just it's satisfying, and then it's more satisfying, and it's more satisfying, and then it's done, and it's just yay, that was awesome. So yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed this film, and I would wholeheartedly recommend it. It's a really good, interesting film with really great performances and a nice, simple story that goes into some complex places. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyed, wholeheartedly recommend.